students on how to do that. Number one is you have to figure out what it is. You have to do some serious reflection on what your death fear is. And for most of my students at Harvard, it's fear of failure. These are super high performing. I mean, this was you. I mean, you went to Stanford and then, and you did all of this, fancy college stuff. And so my guess is that you never had any academic failure, and you were perhaps pretty afraid of academic failure because you'd never experienced it, and because it would have been problematic in your family if you'd started to fail some classes in college. I was going to guess, right?
But I'm a bit confused, because what you spoke about earlier makes a lot of sense as a death failure, because I see a cognitive decline being tied to physical death, because it's an end of life thing. I'm a bit confused about what the students, these 29-year-olds, are equating failure in life, for example, starting a business and having it fail, with actual death.
Yeah. So it's basically, I am a success machine. Most of my students start off as very objectified by their parents, where their parents say, you're the special one, you're successful, you always get A's, you're a hard worker, get it done. And they start to see themselves as kind of homo economicus. They see themselves as highly, high performers. And they're very bright and they're very hardworking. And the result is they don't experience any failure in school. I mean, for me, these are absurd things. You got to be on an exam. Who cares, right? I flunked out of college. I mean, it's like, I know failure, but for them, they've never experienced these things. So it feels like a mortal threat, because it's a threat to who they think they are, which is a successful person, somebody who never fails, and is very foreign territory to them. So whether their death fear is failure or cognitive decline or being forgotten or being irrelevant or actually dying, the technique for getting beyond this is really all the same. And it comes from, that I found very successful, is to do what is called in Theravada Buddhism, the Maranasati meditation. This is the 9-part death meditation that Theravada Buddhist monks in Sri Lanka and Thailand and Vietnam, what they will undertake, in which often they'll contemplate photos of corpses in various states of decay. And they'll say, that is me, and that is me. And they have this Maranasati is a meditation in which they imagine themselves decaying, dying, and then, a rotting, bloated corpse. And then
it's so graphic.
It's super graphic. It's unbelievable. And that's the point, right?
And super accurate.
Yeah.
Like, it really is how a human corpse decays.
It's just unbelievable. And so, and what you're trying to do is what psychologists would call exposure therapy. You're exposing yourself to the inevitable truth. Like, I heard you say, Peter, I'm going to die. Okay, fine. I'm not going to. No, think about it. Why? Because it loses its terror when it becomes familiar. So what I make my students do is a 9-part meditation on their own failure, catastrophic failure by their own terms, which is not necessarily human catastrophic failure. But I remember the first time I did this, I put the steps in because they didn't know how to do it. And the first one is, I'm falling behind my colleagues at school. I graduate, but just barely. I'm not getting the jobs that my friends are getting and that people thought I was going to get. I'm finding my career is not what I thought it was going to be. And then I get to this one point, and I threw this in for a little bit of pathos. And I said, there's one point I say, I think my parents feel sorry for me. And a student starts crying. Because that's the nerve, man. That's the nerve. There's always this point in the death meditation. So figure out what death means for you, where this mortality paradox, it really has teeth. And then actually put together the exposure therapy of walking yourself through the experience, the emotional experience of this failure, and you will be free. This is the one thing that I guarantee, that you'll be free of that. Now, you can't do it just once. You have to do it again and again and again, because what your fear is has deeply rooted in a lot of your experience. But once you're exposing yourself to that again and again, it has an incredible therapeutic impact.